Let's bring in Chris Burkett on this, international lawyer on the subject. Chris, so many places to start. Your thoughts, first of all, on the entire proceeding?
Well, I think after watching Jody Wilson-Raybould, it was a masterclass in how you provide a credible, straightforward response to allegations. She was, in my mind, a profile in calmness and in courage. There she was, standing up and speaking, as she put it, her truth. And she did in a way that, as a former Crown attorney, as someone who spends a lot of time in trial court and observes witnesses, she did it in a way that was believable, was credible. She backed it up with facts, with dates, with contemporaneous notes. So it is an absolute bombshell because it undermines everything that has been coming out of the Liberal Party and even the Clerk of the Privy Council's testimony.
The Prime Minister, though, quick to respond, calling that press conference this evening, saying that that story is not the correct one. So we are at that he said, she said conversation.
I think that's correct. And every day our courts have to grapple with those sorts of debates. And here we have a Prime Minister who's had 3 weeks or thereabouts to respond. And in some ways, the story has shifted. And then you have the former minister who couldn't speak for a significant period of time because of solicitor-client privilege issues, who, when given the opportunity to speak, I think the average Canadian who might sit on a jury who may be asked to assess credibility in other contexts in life would have watched her testimony and come away thinking that she was incredibly credible, believable, and was telling the truth.
Political pressure. Talked about a lot today. The question is that illegal? Let's take a listen to this question from NDP MP Nathan Cullen.
Is it illegal for someone to pressure the Attorney General to offer a special plea like this for political reasons? Is it illegal for someone just to pressure the Attorney General to intervene on a case?
In my opinion, it's not illegal. It is very inappropriate depending on the context of the comments made, the nature of the pressure, the specific issues that are raised. Right. It's incredibly inappropriate and is an attempt to compromise or to impose upon an independent Attorney General.
So, Chris, do you agree with Jody Wilson-Raybould? She's saying it's inappropriate, it's not illegal.
I think we're in a bit of a gray area. Okay. So, she's the former Attorney General, and she's the one that was subjected to the pressure, and clearly she believed it was inappropriate. Obstruction of justice under the criminal code, it's worded in a way that this sort of situation, I believe, could fit an obstruction of justice. If you pervert the course of justice, if you're attempting to subvert a prosecution for political purposes, it certainly, in my opinion, could rise to the level of a criminal offense under the criminal code. That said, I think more to the point today and more to the opposition leader and Mr. Singh's call for a public inquiry, putting aside the potential criminality of the conduct, what we have here is a clear breach of constitutional norms. We live in a society where it is incredibly important that those who are tasked with using their discretion and using their legal training to assess whether a case should go forward are left free from political interference. And this wasn't just a one-off. This wasn't just a, we'd like you to, think about. This was, as the minister put it, consistent, persistent, and included rising to the level of veiled threats. And then when she finally stood her ground, refused, and got to the 11th hour, they demoted, fired her, and here we are today. So my assessment is it's significant political interference, and we as Canadians should be very concerned about that. The criminality, I think, will be leave to another day as more facts come out.
Chris, is this a problem just with the system, though? I think she's wearing two hats here, right? Attorney General and Justice Minister. One's very political, one's supposed to be completely judiciary.
Yeah.
Isn't that a conflict of interest in itself?
Well, it can potentially be, and it can be seen to be a conflict. I know in the British system, they have a separation. The Attorney General sits outside of Cabinet, but does attend Cabinet meetings, and the Justice Minister is a member of Cabinet. And so there are alternative ways of approaching this dual role. That said, and Mr. Wernick himself said the system held, but it only held because the Attorney General did what she was supposed to do, not because those around her did. I would say, if you look at the evidence that she provided today, those who should have been upholding the rule of law, who should have recognized where the line is, those in senior positions, the Principal Secretary, Mr. Butts, the Chief of Staff, the Prime Minister himself, and the Clerk of the Privy Council, all crossed the line, according to the testimony we heard today. And it was only because Miss Wilson-Raybould, and to some extent her chief of staff, Miss Prince, held strong. And I think we heard from Miss Wilson-Raybould about her history, her background, her upbringing, that put her in the right place in Canadian history to withstand that pressure.
Those copious amounts of notes will be very important, I'm sure, going forward.
No
Chris
doubt.
Burkett, international lawyer, great to have you in studio.
Thanks for having me.